Okay, I'm going to give a simulation of what would happen setting up GitHub and setting up a repository the first time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just a second. Is I'm going to go to GitHub. Wow, it just took me right there. That's crazy. Okay, so when you go to github.com, the first thing you're going to need to do is to create an account. Once you've created an account, you should see something like this dashboard here. Once you've created this dashboard and gotten onto here, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to GitHub desktop. GitHub desktop. And we're going to download GitHub desktop. And when we go to GitHub desktop, we're going to go to GitHub desktop, share. You'll see something like this. Okay, first, then what we're going to do is go to the upper left. You should not have a current repository there if it's brand new. If you do, we can create a new repository. I go to here, I click the button, I click add, create new repository, test. Okay. You'll notice that it gives you a local path. In my case, it's the documents folder on my desktop. I've also seen it note the documents folder in OneDrive. I'm not sure where yours is going to go, but I would take careful. I would write down or screenshot where this is. You can also choose your own location. At the moment, I'm just finding it smarter to just go with what it normally chooses. And I'm going to click Create Repository. And I'm going to click Publish Repository. Publish Repository. Then I'm going to open the repository page on GitHub. Okay. And it gives me this. Now, the repository isn't actually usable until there is a, oh, right, share. Okay. So this repository isn't actually going to be valid and won't actually work until we've got an index.html file. I'm going to go to my Finder, and I'm going to share my Finder, share Finder. Okay. And if I go to Documents, you'll see GitHub, the one that I just created is test repository July 2nd. Currently, it doesn't contain anything. So what I want to do is I'm going to take I will take what the heck? I'll take this resume summer project, and I'm gonna shift click on all of these, and I'm going to option drag in this case onto my test repository July 2nd. Then I'm going to go to share, and I'm going to go to GitHub desktop, share, and you'll notice that I have 3 changed files. I've added, it's not actually listing the folders, which is interesting, but it is listing the index.html, CSS file, DS store, which is just something on the Mac that kind of lists what files are available. I'm going to go down to the bottom, summary, initialize, test repository. Okay, we typed that in there. That's an explanation of the changes that we make. When you get more comfortable with Git, you can actually go back and you could have a list of changes. You could have a list of 10 changes that you made to a project. And you could decide that one of those changes you didn't want to actually make. You could go back and remove it. But if you don't, it requires you to write a note. And if this note isn't explanatory enough, it makes it harder to go back and figure out what changes you might need to make. So we try to do our best to give reasonable comments. And then I'm going to commit to main, and I'm going to push origin. And then I'm going to open the repository on GitHub. And you'll see I now have my index.html. I'm still curious why the folders aren't showing up, but I hope I will figure that out eventually. There's a CSS folder. Maybe I just didn't pull over the images folder. Okay, and it says there's 2 commits that were made. Okay, next we need to set this up so that it's possible to view the actual website. I'm sorry, share. GitHub desktop. Share. Yeah, sorry. So here's GitHub. Again, it's the list. There's a list of folder files here that just were sent up. Now we need to take this test repository, which is currently set as private, and make it public. To do that, I'm going to go to settings. We need to tell, oh, interesting. So default branch is main. You need to make sure if you come to this and it says default branch and it says none, you need to click and change this to main. That's the standard default branch. If you don't do that, then it's not going to work. Then I'm going to scroll all the way down to where we see danger zone. This repository is currently private. I'm going to change the visibility to public. I want to make this public. I have read and understand this effect, make this repository public. And now, if I scroll back down, repository is public. Then I'm going to come up here to pages. This, if we click on pages and we haven't made the repository public, then what's going to happen is then when we get here, nothing will happen. Got it. Okay. Build and deployment, deploy from a branch. The branch is main. We click save. It will probably be a few minutes until this then resolves. Okay, has not resolved yet. Okay, we're waiting. There we go. Not too bad a wait. So it says our site is live at this location. We can click this link or we can visit the site, click, and you'll see that what I had put in the repository is now live online. And if I click this or if I copy this link here, I can go to Blackboard and I can paste that Blackboard in, paste that URL in a file to send to me, your professors, so that I can actually check and see that your site is currently live and working. Okay. Another thing I'm going to point out, if I go back to share GitHub desktop, you'll see that one of the options it gives is to open the repository in your external editor. And we've installed Visual Studio Code. Select your editor in settings. If I go to settings, it gives me some options. Apparently Visual Studio Code and BB Edit are the two ones that they're promoting. There may be others that are available. If I open Visual Studio Code and I share Visual Studio Code, it'll ask me if I trust the authors of this. Since I created it myself, I'm going to trust it. And you'll see that up here, I have my CSS folder with normalized CSS. I see my images folder that I was wondering what was going on with. And I click on index. And here is my code. And if you have installed, if you go to the bottom left, there is something called extensions. I have added HTML validate and HTML hint. And you can type those names into these search extensions and it'll give you an option to install them like this. Also, there's a really nice one called Live Preview. I highly recommend live preview. And what you can do is go over then, once you have live preview installed, you can click on show preview and it will actually show you a preview of your text as you work on it. So for instance, this nav background color is red. I could change it to gray and it changes to gray automatically. And so I can see what's going on as I make changes. Once that's done, I'm going to go back here. This gives you your list of files. If you make a change, well, I didn't make a change, so let's change that to gray. And I'm going to save it. And you'll see the second point down is actually source control. It's a connection into Git desktop. And if I click here, you'll see I've made a change. Nav to gray, commit, click, sync changes, click. And now I can go to Git desktop, share, let's see. Git desktop, share. Open the repository in your browser. Share GitHub. Go to settings. Go to pages. Go to visit my site. Has not shown up yet. Hit refresh, and now it's gray. And so this is live. And again, you could send this link to anybody you want, anybody you need to get a job from, so on. And it's a little bit of a pain to get it set up. Once you get it set up, it actually works really nicely as a unit. You could also work in Dreamweaver. I don't think, well, Dreamweaver does not link up so nicely with GitHub Desktop, but you could make changes to your repository using Dreamweaver, and then you would go to GitHub Desktop. It would tell you that there were revisions to your file. You would then, let's see, share. Go back to this. What would happen is it would show you, if you change the files outside of Visual Studio Code and you used, say, Dreamweaver to make the changes, it would still show that there were changed files in the repository. You would then still make a comment. You would commit to main, and then you could still view on GitHub. So it doesn't really matter what you're using to edit with, as long as you've created the repository and the files that you're changing are in the repository.